What's up guys, welcome back to another video. Of course, my name is Gareth from Park Cameras, as it always is. And today we are looking at the Nikon Z7 II. Now we looked at the Z6 II a few weeks ago. I actually really liked that camera. So I've been really excited to check out the Z7 II. I liked the original Z7, but I think it's fair to say there are a few things maybe missing and a few upgrades necessary that Nikon have absolutely delivered on. I've really enjoyed testing this out over the last few days. I've got a lot of thoughts. So we're gonna go over everything. We're gonna talk about all of the different kind of aspects. We're gonna talk about who this camera is for and all that kind of stuff. But the first thing I wanna talk about is actually my kind of overall thoughts, because I've been thinking about this a lot. So obviously there's some upgrades, there's some stuff that was missing from the Z7, which is nice to have in here, dual card slots, for example. There's nothing kind of crazy about the camera, and a bit like with the Z6 II, this is definitely kind of an evolution of the original camera rather than kind of a revolution where we're adding in crazy specs or something crazy. This is just an incredibly solid camera, but it has kind of got improvements across the board in kind of every area that you would hope for. But what really strikes me, apart from all of that, just taking this as an individual camera, rather than thinking about the Z7 and then onto the Z7 II, thinking about this as an individual camera, what has really stuck out to me is this is very good at everything. It's a very good all-rounder, but not in the way we would normally talk about an all-rounder camera. So normally when we talk about an all-rounder camera, it's kind of good at everything, but it doesn't stand out at anything in particular. But that doesn't feel like the case here. This feels like it's very good at all kinds of different things, and you could absolutely invest in this camera if you're into landscape photography, for example. If you're a specific landscape photographer, you've got the nice high resolution, you've got decent ISO performance, you've got things like image stabilization, really good image stabilization. If you want to use handheld, but go for a slightly longer shutter speed, you've got really nice colors. But then if you want to go portrait, a lot of that is going to apply there as well. Things like nice high resolution so you can crop and do things like that. And you've got really good detail there, good colors, image stabilization, good ISO performance. So if you're a street photographer, or, I mean, you know, I appreciate this is probably, you might want to go for a smaller camera for street photography, but you could get some really nice stuff. But also I could see people using this for professional video work, you know, which is not something that I normally would expect from a high resolution photography camera. But actually it's got really good video specs in there as well, and some really nice stuff if you want to do some pro video. But anyway, before we talk about that in more detail, let's jump in to image quality, because that's got to be the main focus of a camera, right? Image quality, probably one of the most important things. Now this is rocking the 45.8 megapixel sensor, same as in the Z7, but I don't think that really needed to change at all. This is a nice high resolution sensor, which gives you really good detail. I love, with Nikon cameras, I actually love the colors. I love the colors, I love the contrast, I love the sharpness. I just think it looks really good. I've been using the 24-70 f2.8 and the 70-200 f2.8, so nice lenses. But I noticed with the Z6 II as well, the colors are so nice, just immediately out of camera. I really like that. That's a lovely place to start with as well when you then go on to edit your photos. It can shoot 10 frames a second in burst mode, so not the fastest, but again, it's a high resolution. And actually that's really not bad at all. I could see someone, you know, who dabbles in sport or wildlife as well as some other stuff, that would actually be quite a useful thing to have. And if you do landscape and you want to capture maybe some birds or something like that, that's a useful thing to have in the camera. Of course, couple that with the image stabilization, which actually is really nice. And you can get some nice kind of longer exposure shots handheld. I mean, we're not talking crazy, like trying to do a 10-second shot handheld, but it does allow you to use, you know, keep that shutter open a bit longer, get more light in there. Now, of course, image quality is great, but let's talk about autofocus, because that's an area that in the industry as a whole is just becoming so good across the board. And fortunately, that seems to be the case here as well. I didn't have any problems with autofocus. The eye autofocus works really fast and really well. The tracking, super easy and really good. So I was actually using it for a little bit of landscape, which I know sounds a bit silly, but I wanted to test it out, where I would just press on the screen to select an area to track, in this case a lighthouse, then move my camera completely somewhere else and come back, and it would still track the lighthouse when it came back into frame, which I really liked. Really good for subject tracking as well. And of course you've got animal autofocus in there as well, which of course is a popular thing now and handy to have in the camera for sure. It also worked very well for video, which is nice because that's, you know, you never know whether the autofocus is going to work as well in video as it does in photography and vice versa and things like that. But it does, it works really nicely. It made video nice and easy. You know, it just makes for running and gunning a whole situation very, very nice. If you're doing portrait photography, autofocus can take care of it. Landscape is obviously relatively straightforward, but then video as well, the autofocus is reliable, which is key, I think, which is really key. Now, part of the reason that this is faster and better, especially for autofocus, is because it's now got 2 X-speed processors in there, which just sort of speeds up the whole thing. And you can kind of feel it as you just navigate through the menus and things like that. It's pretty snappy, you know, it's pretty fast. And that helps with the autofocus as well. It's very quick and locks on really nicely, you know, it's good, I like it. So let's talk about video for a second, because while this is obviously a great photography camera, high resolution, all that kind of stuff, actually it's surprisingly good for video. And a bit like the Z6 II, this is kind of probably going under the radar a little bit as a really good video system. You know, there's a lot of good video cameras out there now, and I feel like this happened a little bit with the original Z6 and Z7. They were actually really good for video, and they probably didn't get enough recognition in that department. And certainly, this is a very nice video system as well. So you've got 4K, 60 frames a second, 4K 30, obviously. You've got full HD up to 120 frames a second, so that nice, smooth, slow motion. And something which is really nice, which Nikon have added into this camera, is you can shoot in RAW over HDMI. So that is a nice feature to have in there. And if you want to do more pro video stuff, that is fantastic. Now, obviously it'd be nice to have 4K 120 in there. I think 4K 60 is good. I think that's a good option to have in there. But, you know, we can't have everything, and I think this is a really solid camera, maybe without the 4K 120, but you've got that raw video. Ooh, and that is exciting. So how does it feel? Let's talk about the design, the feel of this camera. Now, this is an incredibly solid feeling camera. Really, really solid. It has a very, very comfortable grip. I think it must be deeper. I've got quite big hands, but it feels very, very comfortable, but without, you know, causing too much an issue with the lens being right there. The buttons are all placed really nicely, just like on the Z6 II as well. And they feel good, you know, they're raised, they're a very tactile feeling kind of thing. So you can really feel what you're doing. So if you don't take your eye away from the shutter, it's not too hard to just press whatever you're looking for. The EVF is not super high res, but it does look good. And then of course the touchscreen at the back, again, not super high res, but it does look good. And it is a touchscreen. I was using that for things like tracking. I was using it for changing some values as well for ISO and things like that. It's a handy thing to have. But overall, it just feels good. Now, it's not the lightest. I've got it with the 24-70 f2.8 here, which is not the lightest lens, to be honest. It's not the lightest camera. I have no issue with it really going around handheld. Maybe for weddings or something, I'd want to use maybe a prime lens or something like that. I like the way it feels. I like the fact that it's a solid feeling camera. It feels like it could take, you know, I'm not saying you should drop it. I'm just saying it feels like it could take a bit of punishment. It doesn't feel cheap, is what I'm saying. It doesn't feel kind of flimsy. Now, if you want to check out this camera for yourself with the price, the description, all that kind of stuff, absolutely there's links down in the description so you can go and check that out. Of course, if you have any questions, I'll spend some time with this, so I'll try to learn as much as I can, so pop them down in the comments and I'll get back to you ASAP. If you like the video, don't forget to like and subscribe because that helps me out a huge amount. I will see you in the next video, and as always, thanks for watching.